But with casting, it's been my career, it's been my bread and butter. But again, I was trying to figure out, can I be something else outside of casting? Can I be something outside of entertainment? And what does that look like?
Yay! Welcome to the There She Goes podcast. I have a very special guest today. I'm so excited for you all to hear from Hutton Salvatore. Welcome to the show, Hutton.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Let me quickly introduce you to everybody. So, Hutton Salvatore is an entrepreneur and systems strategist. She helps women build the back end of their businesses so they can grow without burning out. Hutton actually comes from the TV casting world. I can't wait to hear more about that, where everything runs on systems and organization. And now she brings that same skill set into the online business space. Welcome, Hutton. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for recapping. It's nice to meet everybody in your audience. And yeah, let's dive in. Do you have any, where do you want to start?
Yeah. Let's start with super quick introducing how we met. But this is going to be a really fun conversation because even though we did briefly meet at Chantel's She Is Worthy community, shout out to Chantel, I've been very excited to dig a little deeper. So we connected online. Hutton was a speaker at the latest Galentine's event that Chantal hosted. And I, preemptively connected with Hutton, and we were just following each other from the online space. And I think both of us curious about each other's lives, curious about what we were putting out there, feeling like this really cool energy and vibe that we talked about. And then we met briefly in person. But actually, I think it's going to be really fun because you all get to see live some real questions that I have, just genuine curiosity, and that I actually don't know. So you get to learn a little more about Hutton as I do real time.
Yes, I love that so much. And yeah, I'd say we were just talking about how energy just doesn't lie. And I mean, you can't deny when you feel an energy like that. We both really felt like we wanted to meet each other. And I think I followed you from a speaking event that you were doing. So it just, the timing and alignment, it was perfect. Yeah.
So, okay, I am so excited that you told us. I'm, very particularly excited to hear a little bit about the TV casting world. I am not very familiar with that side. And actually, so I don't know if you know, Hutton, but part of this podcast for me is also a way to give a stage to the creatives that are behind the stage, typically or behind the scenes. So whether that's songwriters, screenwriters, so and anybody really in the behind the scenes, video producers. And so actually I think that you are such a perfect example because you're also you've got this great entrepreneurship side and motherhood side, soft power, and I'm super excited to dive into that. But you're also in the category of the creative field, and specifically a creative that works typically behind the scenes, right? So I would love to hear how you got into the entertainment industry, specifically how you got into casting, and what does that actually look like?
Sure. Yeah, great questions. So the casting world, I'd say I grew up in the entertainment industry. I mean, my parents both kind of worked in the business. My mom's a production accountant. My stepdad is a transportation coordinator and captain. And so kind of grew up around, big sets and stuff, going to Paramount premieres as a kid and stuff. So it's kind of a different lifestyle than most people. And at the same time, that's only half of my life. I have, anyway, let's just talk about casting. I don't want to go too far away from the subject. But so yeah, this is sort of the environment I grew up in, kind of learning about production and that it was a great industry to get into. My parents really didn't want me to get into it though. They really wanted me to go to school for something, smarter. I don't know, they wanted me to maybe be a doctor or whatever. But my whole vision was seeing them and, behind the scenes and working those jobs. And I could see my mom was, she worked in finances. So I would see like a lot of big budget and things that she was handling. And, I loved watching her and her power in doing that. And same thing for my stepdad. He definitely showed me a different way of like running things and having a work ethic and all of the things. He would wake up at 3 a.m. to get to set and be home after we were done with dinner. So like those are the kind of, and it was hard growing up, I would say, because my parents often put us in daycare or after school centers, things like that, because that's just what they had to do to work those hours. So the one thing about production you'll find is that you do work like 12, 14-hour days, and that's obviously really hard for most families to sustain and have a functioning household. So I quickly kind of figured that out going into the business. But I wound up going to college for production, and I didn't know exactly what field I would be in. So I did a multimedia, what is it called? My BA is in multimedia. And with that, I learned basically everything like editing, audio, web design, coding. We made video games, we made 360 videos. So like anything that encompasses media was what I was working on in school. So going into the workforce straight out of school, I obviously applied at, entertainment companies and different studios. And I got a couple little gigs. My mom helped me with like accounting roles, got me in my first couple jobs. And that was like clerk work. So you're like filing and a lot of payroll stuff. So that's where I kind of got a good foundation for structure and like organizing, and slowly realized that I felt very, I don't know, kind of trapped. There was no creative work in accounting. So I kind of knew right away that I didn't really want to stay in it. But funny enough, so you mentioned there was an NCIS poster back here. So I got a job on NCIS, and it was a killer job. I mean, it was on Paramount Lot. I had all the perks, all the benefits, but I quickly discovered, like I'm telling you, a month in, I realized this is not for me. And so I wound up quitting, no shame. I really and I've never quit a job like that where I felt like, I don't know, in the past, quitting a job is serious. It's emotional, and this one was like, I knew right away, this isn't for me, and I'm okay with it. And I walked away from it. And so after that is when I started applying to new jobs and wound up going into casting. But I had a leg up in casting because I had done some PA work. I'd done, PA is like a personal assistant on set. So they run around and they make sure everything's set up and you're there early. And sometimes you're driving the big trucks and stuff. So I'd done a bit of that while getting into the industry and trying different jobs like accounting. And one of the jobs that I got to do was a true crime show, and it was called Ice Cold Blood. And on that show, I was hired as basically a talent wrangler. So I would take the talent to set and, approve their wardrobe, make sure they look good, and send them out. And so these were like recreate. Yeah. So these were
I've never heard that term. That's hilarious. Talent.
Yeah. So these were like recreation scenes. So they had to like look like people that they were depicting. And so we had such a small budget on this show. And this is when production really, I think, started to kind of decline with the way that, things have been going. I don't know if you're aware, but obviously the entertainment industry in Hollywood is very much suffering, I think, still to this day. There is work, but it's not the way it used to be. And that's due to a lot of, new media. But
technology, like AI, CGI, all that.
Yeah, well, and like the way of doing things with big production studios, like you've seen all these sales going on, Paramount buying, different lots. What was it? Or which lot was just up for sale? But there's been a lot of that, like Netflix buying things, So
yeah, consolidation everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, consolidation everywhere, and just like that's where the money is now. It's YouTube, it's things like that. So but yeah, so the true crime show was my big break in casting. So casting world, I was working, like I said, I was doing talent wrangling, but then our casting director quit on the site. And so I sort of just got roped into it. And it was like, I didn't mind at the time. I was hustling. I was so excited. I had just gotten engaged. So like I was in a good space in my life, and I was like, I want to work my way to the top and make more money and, be in a good place with our life financially, physically, and then eventually have hopefully a family. But yeah, so working on that show kind of gave me a leg up. I got myself into casting because I had been recording continuity for these actors, like their what they were wearing on set and everything. So I had already like been documenting all their information because I'm an organization freak. So I had spreadsheets already with everything needed. And so when it came time to like, hey, we need to call these people back for reshoots or whatever next scenes we had with them, but the casting director quit, you know, so what are we going to do? Are we going to hire somebody new? And it just sort of like, I just fell into both positions and sort of handled both. And it was really cool. It was way too much work though for one person. And so I think they brought me back the next season and I was able to hire on one of my friends to do the personal like assisting with me. And so, and that was really fun. We held like in-person auditions 2019, just before the pandemic. And like, it was fun. And we were in Encino in our office and people came in and just live auditions, like improv. And so a really good high point in my career, I'd say. It was a very fun time. And then after that, the show ended. That show kind of didn't get picked up for another season. And that's when I started applying to new casting companies because I realized, hey, this is creative. I really like this. And it kind of gives me both of the things that I love: organizing, creativity, people, all of it. And so found Cornwall Casting, which is the company that I've worked on and off with for the last like 5-6 years. And they do reality shows, game shows. They've done some big projects. Our last big thing was the 1% Club. So it's just the thing with that show. It's like it's 100 people per episode, so the volume on it is pretty high. So there are not many shows that do that, and the fact that we were doing it episode after episode, season after season, I just became very like skilled in that and creating the systems that were needed, and learned from an extremely like well-skilled director who's been in the business for, you know, I don't know how long, but way longer than I had. And so, and yeah, she took me under her wing and she just taught me everything that she kind of knew. And now I've been able to now bring a lot of these skills with me into other industries because, well, like I was saying, since, you know, television, the studios, things have changed. And so there's not as much work. And so the last 5 years have been me trying to figure out, where do I go? Do I still keep doing casting work, or what is my skill set? And that's why, you know, I've started side businesses and gone the entrepreneurial route and trying to figure it out. And in the last, I'd say like year, it kind of just all has been making a full circle where I'm like, okay, I actually see what the common denominator in all of this is. Like, I'm really good at systems and really good at organizing. I create like a lot of these things for this business already in casting. Hey, I can do this for other companies. And so that's just kind of the big overall picture of what I've done and where I feel like it's going, because media has changed so much. And so this most recent project I'm doing is with a big YouTube channel. And so anyway, that's just the evolution, I think, of media and how I play a role in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's so cool. I'm definitely
so
really
much
excited. No, no worries. I was going to say, it's so funny. I'm going to be super like authentic and vulnerable too. I don't know if you noticed, but in previous takes, I didn't have my microphone in front of me. So I completely forgot. And so hopefully you could hear me. You probably can hear me a lot better now because the mic is actually on my face. So no, please don't worry. We've had some technical difficulties on this episode, and you know what? It's been fun. And you know what? That's what makes this user created content, right? That's what makes this. You talked about how different media is nowadays, and media has evolved, and YouTube is where it's at. And I firmly believe that's because we're human. We're not AI. This is the kind of thing that, you know, shows you that we are. So, Hutton, I definitely am not, you know, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur myself. I know you are too, not just entrepreneur, but multi-passionate creative, right? And person. And I do firmly believe that, you know, none of us can be put into a box. So yes, I'm going to be asking a little more. I want to dig a little bit more into casting, but that's genuinely because of curiosity. Do you know that I want to hear about all aspects of like really where this led you, especially to where you are now. And, you know, you do so much, like way outside. Actually, I didn't even know you did casting, to give you a sense, right? So before like I started following and we talked more, that was like it's like
Yeah.
casting was like the least on my mind. So like you said, no, I don't think you could be put in a box. You do so much outside of this,
Yeah.
but I just, from an entertainment kind of background or performing background, I'm just so excited to hear some of this behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
super quick before we dive into some of your other journeys and stories, when it comes to casting, I would just love to know maybe if you could do some myth busters,
Sure.
or talk about, like, you know what I mean, like from somebody that's like zero knowledge of what it's like to actually cast
Yeah.
someone. Like, is there a time where you've ever gone to a coffee shop and go like, that person would be perfect for this show? You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what does it actually look
Oh,
like
yeah.
to be in casting?
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on the project that we're doing. So I did Farmer Wants a Wife last year, and that's such a different like realm of casting where you're looking for people who look good and they might be interested in a farmer. So that was a different type of typecasting where I am like I'm seeing people out in person and I'm like, oh my god, I'm at the gym. This girl has like a what is it, like camouflage sweater on, and she just looked like she fit the role. And I was like, I've got to talk to her. So it's little things like that, and it depends on what show we're casting for. But I do find a lot of times, yeah, or I'll think of somebody I know, and I'm like, hey, this is a perfect fit for you. You should apply, or the connections you make through casting are unlike any other because it's mass scale of meeting people too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So if you're hearing that out there, yes, that's it's not a lie. Go
Yeah, we're
sing at the coffee
casting.
shops, go to the gym. You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, and you never know what they're thinking about for you. And with somebody like me, I think that I'm constantly trying to produce people, whether that's for a project I'm working on or for what they're interested in. And that's sort of why I think I started, my show because I was like, everybody has something to share, and I like
Yes.
I want to know what your passion is. Same like you said, like you've got this stage to also share my story. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've done the same thing, but I feel that even with having my own show, I'm not necessarily sharing as much about myself. So it's interesting. I think I don't know. I don't know if you find that too while you're recording, but
Yeah, for sure. I think
yeah,
I think to your point about casting, same with podcasting, I find that it
yeah,
creates so many connections. And I think it's such an
yeah,
easy ask. It's like, hey, like, you want to get to know somebody. I've never come up with a better way to get to know someone than say, do you want to be a guest on the podcast? Like, I'm like,
exactly.
wow, it's just such a easy ask. And I think it's like reverting back to elementary school, like, hi, do you want to be my friend? Like,
Yes.
I don't know, I feel like nowadays it's so hard to do that. And I don't know, I feel like podcasting opens the door to be like, yeah, hi, I find
Yeah.
you interesting, would you like to talk about your story? It is really cool. And I think the difference obviously with casting for something specific, I think with this podcast and like with yours, it's the same thing. It's actually about the everyday stories and finding the magic. There is a common thread for sure, finding the magic in those everyday stories, but everybody has magic. Everybody has something to share.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I love it.
I love this. So, beyond the world of casting, so maybe talk a little bit about you've mentioned that you found yourself in a place where you were burnt out from being in high pressure environments such as entertainment and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I guess finding this need to constantly prove yourself to
Yeah.
build a life that actually feels aligned. So what did
Yeah.
that look like for you? Was there a moment where you were like, hey, I'm burning out? Was it when you became a mom? Was there a moment, or was it a series of moments that led you to be like, oh, I need to make a change?
Yeah, well, the first moment that I had like that when I realized, wait a minute, I don't know if this career is sustainable to have a family and the lifestyle that I want to have was my wedding, the night before my wedding. I was still working on the Ice Cold Blood project, and I wasn't obviously going to be on set that day because it was my wedding day. But I was still the director, the casting director, like in charge of everything and making sure that people were where they're supposed to be. And the way that we were casting it, since we had no budget, no time, I mean, everything was very much down to the wire. Whereas, like, I was putting together our call sheet at midnight before my wedding. So that's when it really hit me. And I was like, I can't do this forever. What do I do when I'm pregnant, have kids? Like, how am I going to make this sustainable for me? Um, And so I don't know if the pandemic was just a blessing in disguise for some of us, because it kind of was that for me. Because I quickly, like, I was, I was actually pregnant during my wedding. So I don't know if we talked about that yet.
Nope.
But I was a couple months pregnant already. So my husband and I had gotten engaged. We found out that we were going to have the baby. So we rushed our wedding. And we're grateful we did, because it was 2019 in December. So literally pre-pandemic.
Ooh.
And then,
Things
yeah.
happen for a reason.
Yeah, and so I literally wrapped up this show, Ice Cold Blood, and within a couple months, I started with the company Cornwell Casting, and we were going into the office every day. And like you said, this need to prove yourself. So I had a boss say something to me that was something that I didn't know. I never knew how I would share this, because it's somebody I really respected too, and I didn't want to put a bad image on the person or a relationship with them. But it's so far behind us. I'm sure this person doesn't even know what they said to me. But we were on set, and I was, fairly pregnant at this point, and this was, I think, right after the wedding. I'd come back and, doing what I do, and my boss had said something to me like, "Oh, you're gonna come back, or are you gonna come back? Are you gonna be able to come back?" In a way that was very condescending, as if once I have a baby, I can't do this job anymore. And so that's what really started this like imposter syndrome, this need to prove. And that's when I started like, well, what else can I do? What else can I be good at? And so how can I use my skills wisely? And so I started to like build online, and I was like, I don't know. I had saved a bit of money up too. And I was like, I think it's a good time to start my own business, So, um, and that's when I started a clothing store, and quickly found out that that was a lot of manual, physical labor, and then sales, which was something that I had no experience in. And I'm still not very good at sales to this day. So I really struggled in fashion. And that
Could I
led to the
ask too?
practice burnout. Go ahead.
Yep. I actually, it's because I really wanted to dig into that too. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, like you said, so you makes total sense, by the way, why you would be burned out. It sounded like you talked about the hours, like really long hours. I mean, now you're telling me you're having extremely important milestones in your life. You're about to get married, and you're working, and you're pregnant. And so yeah, I mean, in general, it sounds very stressful, high
Yeah.
pressure, lots going on. And you did mention like, okay, like if they're crunching on budgets, that means you're probably doing multiple people's jobs. And so, yeah, that definitely sounds like high, pressure cooker. But
Yeah.
what made you go, oh, I think so. Your clothing line is Shop
Irie.
Irie?
So
Irie
yeah.
from your
So
daughter's name, right?
yeah. So basically, yeah, clothing was like, well, I'll actually backtrack a little bit, because I would say like multiple passions, entrepreneurship, whatever. It's because it's not my first venture, I guess. The first clothing store was Hutton Nicole. And so it's just
Oh.
named after me. That's still my LLC to this day. And so, yeah, it's just, I eventually rebranded it. So like I said, I was doing in-person pop-up sales. I decided I'm going to invest in inventory. I'm going to start a clothing store. One, because I had just gotten out of college. And I was in a sorority, and we did those, weekly, every weekend was something new, a dance, a fun event, whatever. And we were always trying to look the best and have the newest stuff. And so I think in 2018, 2019, that's what was trending, And so I was like, how can I make money right now? What are people interested in? People want clothes. So let's get into clothing. And so that's just sort of how my mind kind of works. But I was like, I have so many amazing women around me I can work with, who want to be featured, who want photos. So let's do it. Let's put all our skills together. Let's create the website. Let's take the pictures. Let's do it all. And it was fun. It was like a branding project basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think quickly I discovered, like, if you're not selling the items and you have too much, the styles change quickly. So that's what I went into. Styles were changing. People weren't buying my stuff, and they were like, when are you going to get new stuff? And I was like, well, I
I
need to
haven't
get
sold the
rid of
other stuff.
yeah, I can't get new stuff until I get rid of stuff. So I started sourcing for options, like how can I have new products without throwing away everything that I've invested. And so that's when drop shipping was already like becoming a thing and becoming more popular. And so it was easy for me. I mean, like systems and stuff like that, computer stuff. I'm like, okay, easy operation. Like, okay, I can plug a store into my shop. Oh, I can add products that I don't even own and I don't have to worry about it. This is amazing. This is the solution to the problem right now. So at the time, and that worked. And then I was like, why are people still not buying my stuff? And so a friend of mine was like, oh, it's just like if it wasn't named after you, I'd probably buy more. And I was like, oh, okay. So
Oh.
so it's a branding thing then. People who grew up with me don't want to buy from me because my store is named after me. Okay. And that like festered obviously in my brain where I'm like, okay, yeah, you got to change. You got to pivot. What could it be? And so I had just had my daughter and her name is Irie. So that's why Shop Irie Girl came. I was looking for like a nature theme, something that just fit with me and like what I was trying to put out there, peace, harmony, like, I don't know, wearing clothes. And then it slowly turned into like dressing with my daughter. So mommy and me clothes. And so there's been like a lot of pivots in it. Um, and I think, and then you see this influencer culture online. And so you're trying to kind of mimic things that you see. And I would see mommies in matching outfits. And I would try to do that with my daughter. And I had the products on the website, but my daughter wouldn't take pictures the way that other kids do. And so there were like little things where you're finding like, oh my God, this just isn't working. This just isn't working. And so I think that if it feels that way where you just pivot, obviously, but, figure out what is working or what aligns with you. And so each point I've had to go, okay, this isn't working. This is pivot, align again.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, and then in the last, year or two, I've been trying to decide, do I keep the store? Do I get rid of it? And again, in a thing of like trying to prove something to myself at this point. And so after speaking at Chantel's event, I realized I enjoyed it. I really liked speaking. I don't know if it's my 100% passion. It's like even just doing this or like my podcast, I find myself like I have trouble going back and listening and editing. So I don't know if speaking is my passion yet. And that's still something I'm trying to figure out. But as I'm like discovering and learning and pivoting, I've really like figured out I'm good at operations. I'm good at systems building, things like that, creating things that people are lacking in their company. And so I don't know if I lost you at all.
No, I love that. I think it's like really becoming clear to me how unapologetic you are about trying new things, about pivoting, changing your mind, and unapologetic about not knowing if this is the path you want to continue on. Like I love that because I'm very new to that kind of, take on life and career. And so I used to be very hard on myself that it's like, well, if you're putting something out publicly, you better know that that's what you want to do. And now I'm like, no, that's not the case. Like, if anything, I'm hearing new voices that have been really encouraging, telling me how they admire the fact that I go and do things that I say I'm going to do. And when I do it, I fully commit. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to fully commit forever, right?
Yeah.
You fully commit to trying. But if it's not for you, it's actually doing you a disservice to keep going because you're, like you said, you end up just doing something out of proving your worth ultimately. And you can't prove your worth because you're worthy innately. There's nothing you could do. So I just love that you seem to have gone from the burnout to trying things to not pressuring yourself to figure it all out. And you're kind of in that middle phase though, where things are starting to click. You're seeing some patterns and I love that because I feel like that's where I'm at. So, I mean, I definitely hear the operations side of things coming through when you mentioned this is a big detail oriented piece when you mentioned that you had to be responsible for making sure that, from one day to the next, the cast looked the same as they did in the previous take. And I love that because I have seen, I'm not the most observant person for this, but I've noticed here and there where it's like, that hairstyle is so off, like from that, previous scene, or like, ooh, like, I don't know, the outfit looks completely different. So the fact that you take those details and you were responsible for making sure that they looked the same, that speaks to your detail oriented nature. So maybe can you talk about some of the other ways that you found that building systems and operations was actually something you were doing this whole time and that you actually enjoyed doing it?
Yeah, well, I'll say like one of the like really aha moments I had was in the last few weeks. I've just started with this new company. It's a bigger YouTube streamer, and I've never worked with a YouTube channel before. So again, it's all new. They don't necessarily follow normal production standards. And then not the standards, I'm sorry, but like the systems and the things that we are used to, I guess, in production. It's changing because the needs are changing, of course, too. But so like quickly, like day one or day two, I was just kind of thrown into some of these projects, and I was like, oh, okay, I know exactly what to do because again, I've done this with other companies. But like 5 minutes in, I was like, why are they doing so much manual work? Like, I don't understand. And so like a day, I think same day or next day, we got on a Zoom call, and that was one of the first things I said. I was like, why are you guys doing so much manual labor? You can automate so much of this. And they kind of were like, I think one girl was kind of taken aback because she had like built a lot of it and taken her time to do it, And so, and I come in day one and I'm like, why are you doing all that? So I think that just really showed me where I was like, wait a minute, you have a lot of years in this industry and it transfers into other industries, and you know what you're doing. It's not like you just started and you're figuring it out like everything else I've done. I kind of just started and I'm figuring it out and seeing how I do. But with casting, it's been my career, it's been my bread and butter. But again, I was trying to figure out, can I be something else outside of casting? Can I be something outside of entertainment? And what does that look like, I guess. So I've always known that I wanted to have some kind of leadership, a little bit of authority over whatever it is I do. And I've wanted freedom, time freedom, especially to be with my kids and all that. And so trying to figure that out has been a challenge. But now that I'm realizing, okay, there's service in this. And right now with AI taking over, like I've done the courses, I've done the, products, I've done a lot of different things, but realistically, people need services done for them because they can look up anything on AI now. You don't need to buy a course. I mean, I'm not talking down on anybody who has a good course. I've obviously built one myself, but what I found is that people really want help, physical help. So, and it's not that hard to just be able to figure out what you're good at. Sorry, I don't know why I said it's not that hard. Sometimes it's really hard, but once you figure it out, being able to package it, talk about it, sell it, that's kind of usually the hard part. And what I found with me with this is like, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm talking about this so naturally to people. This isn't work for me. This is alignment. This is what I'm good at. This is what I know and what I do. So how can I do this for other people rather than, and again, and I'm doing this all in all my businesses that aren't necessarily they're not paying me what I need them to pay me. So why don't I look outwards and see who else needs this help? And so that's sort of that evolution, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I literally distinctly remember you posted about it on your social media, like, oh, hey, like I do websites, and oh, hey, if you need help with your systems, I do that. And I quickly was like, you do? And so I was like, cool, because I've actually quickly learned that is not my area of expertise, that's actually, to your point, I'm like, wow, like it just, I love hearing about the strengths of that everybody brings to the table, because I do firmly believe in community. I believe in, I'm learning to believe more in delegation and hiring support, because I am learning where I'm like, oh, I can't do everything always by myself forever. At some point, you need to invest and you need to commit to, you following your passions and strengths, and letting people help you again where that makes sense for you and at the moment that you can. But at some point you do have to make those decisions, investments, etc., partnerships, collaborations. So I'm all about that. And so, yeah, I was very interested to hear that, because you, from everything that you do, I think I would assume from the outside looking in that you're very much used to being maybe in the spotlight, right? Where so you spoke, or you've got your shop, you're doing casting, you have your own podcast, right? So very much like those kind of public facing roles. Turns out you're actually really good over here on the back end too. So I'm like, wow, it was really cool to see that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's been one of the hardest things to figure out because it's like, okay, wait, I mean, I'm really good at this and I kind of have an interest in, becoming forward facing and becoming a brand. And I think I've gotten more comfortable with it over time because of obviously social media, things that we're, just trying to live in this different digital world. Obviously, we kind of have to be more forward facing. And that's like one of the things that one of my coworkers, he's doing too now. Not a current coworker, but I've worked with him producing in the past, and he's like literally turned his skills into a course too, where he can help people produce themselves on video for interviews, for social media, whatever it is. But basically taking our roles and our skills in production and pivoting them and expanding them so that we can help other people like that.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else I was going to say. Oh, and so becoming forward facing. So that's something that I've just been really like trying to figure out over the last few weeks too. And I think that's sort of where soft power comes into play too, because for a for like a year. So this isn't my first show. I started the Irie Girl podcast when when Irie Girl store was more active and vibrant and all that. Um, and same thing, like 5 episodes in, I was like, I don't know if this is for me, but mostly because I was also feeling burnout, just taking on too many things and being a mom. The show part, I think that's just something that I've been trying to figure out. Am I good at this? Do I like this? Do I really want to do this? Or do I just want to be in the background? But I think that there's something to be said about the fact that you kind of have to put your face out there to get the service, the roles, whatever you're looking for too. So I think they go hand in hand. And I think that's where soft power really plays a great role and why I created it in the first place, because I think people do perceive you as one or the other. And I feel like there can be both. So
Yes. Yes. I really wanted to hear you talk about soft power, just like what does that term even mean to you? Tell us a little bit about the podcast, what inspired you to start it. But super quick, before you get into that, thank you for validating that, because I wanted to make sure that, that's kind of back to what I was saying about not putting people in a box. And it is easy to do that. It's like, I think as humans, we like to categorize things. We do like to think in boxes because it's like, oh, that makes my brain happy. There's a category. Yeah. And so to your point, I do think that there's this misconception that just because you are, public facing doesn't mean that you can't excel in the back end systems, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Just because you can do both. You can actually excel more in one or the other, but both, like, they're not mutually exclusive. And I do have a friend who she's a creative executive assistant, and she's a coach, and she has a podcast. I'm like, no, like, she could be amazing at the back end, and she's really good in front of the camera too, So that doesn't happen to necessarily be my skill set. Project management, yes. So there's some back end. Don't get me wrong. I'm organized. I could do some of the back end editing, things like that. But when it comes to like building out my like customer systems and like workflows, I'm like, oh wow, I've got a little challenge there.
Okay.
So talk to us about what soft power means to you, why you chose that term, why is that something that you launched a whole podcast about?
Yeah. So I think again, I started my first show was Irie Girl, and I felt like that is not something that's searchable. It's not something that people are looking for, obviously. So I kind of struggled with promoting it, putting it out there, all of that, just because I was like, the name just wasn't really what I was sharing. So that being said, it took me literally like 2 years, I think, to really rebrand, figure out what is my message, what do I want to put out in the world that is more me. Because I was like, at this point, I'm just like sharing a lot, and that's what it turns out to be with when you start on too many side passions and projects, it can turn into like you have so much mixed messaging going on. What do you do? What do you offer? And so that's sort of the problem that I've been dealing with for the last few years, and just trying to figure out how do I like streamline, how do I figure out one lane. And so I think I was holding on to the clothing business for so long that it was really like kind of eating up at me, and I was like resentful, and I'm like, why am I not making as much money? And I got involved in network marketing and to try to make a second income, separate income, and it just quickly gave me like the same problems, and I was like, I'm just not living in alignment, and I tried another company, and so it's just like I was continuing the cycle and not solving the problem or getting down to the root of it. And so within this last year, I was like, okay, I really need to figure out my problem, figure out who am I, what am I sharing, what do I want to put out in the world. And so I was like, I need to work through some of my own like trauma that I had. I've done therapy over the years. I feel like I'm in a good place when I started a lot of this, but as you go through the entrepreneurial journey, a lot of old stuff came back up. So I definitely had to like work through a lot of that. And in the last year, I took some life coaching courses, and I started getting like just super disciplined with fitness, just because I never really had that in my life. I wasn't very fit. I was kind of the party girl, I just didn't really care. And so the last year I just started like really doing that, and like as I'm getting my alone time, because I hadn't had alone time either in the last 5 years because of my kids. And so taking that time for me, I was starting to like really recalibrate like my brain, my thinking, my wiring, my nervous system. And so I really was focusing on nervous system regulation, and so soft power came from that. Trying to rise, build something successful, big, but also do it softly and like in a way that won't burn me out in the ways that I had experienced prior. And so I think that came with like a lot of the external pressure or internal pressure that we put on ourselves. So from having to have a new episode on the podcast every week, that was something that really, really, yeah, I see you, I know, because that really made it hard for me. And instead of continuing on with my first show or whatever and just working through it, I just quit. And I was like, I'm not going to let that happen again. It's okay if I don't put an episode out every week, but I do want to keep going and see where it takes me, and if this is something that I want to do, right? Because I don't know until I keep going.
I think that it's really interesting to hear you talk about that. I don't know. I firmly believe in that. I think that's why I asked what soft power meant to you, because I think that's like, it is a term maybe that like, I think I'm hearing more often, but
well, that's the
maybe, go ahead.
No, that was the weird thing, is like as soon as I kind of figured out what I was going to do and how I came up with the thing, her soft power and all of that, I started creating my web pages and branding. And then next thing I know, it's popping up left and right. Like I hear my friend talking about it on a podcast. I see other people posting about it and talking about the soft girl era is not this, it's not that. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you guys talking about? You don't even know how awesome it could be if we could make soft being powerful. Like you're a woman. Being a woman means you have to be in your feminine. Being in your feminine means becoming softer. But so much of our lives as like children and teenagers, we're hardening. We're not softening, so we're becoming more masculine. And so that's sort of just where I was like, okay, connect with myself, where I'm at in life, motherhood, being present for them is number one priority. And so how can I like really like dial in on this feeling? And it's really what came to me was just like, I can be powerful, but I can also be soft, because I'm not an angry, aggressive parent. I'm like, and same with business or whatever. Like if something's not working, I'm not going to yell at somebody. I'm just going to simply pivot. So that's just how I'm like, okay, pivot. So
Yeah.
you're just figuring it out as you go. So I think that's just softening in life.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I do see it as like soft power. I guess I do see it like a feminine power And I think it's this idea, right? I mean, just think about the fact that, the business world or just the working world has been dominated by men
Exactly.
since always
Yeah.
until very, very, very recently. I
Yeah.
mean, what, 60 years, maybe a little over that. But, you know, there is something to be said about that, where I think the way we see power has been framed as like maybe more masculine or aggressive. And
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be the case. There is power in embracing that softness. And it could be anywhere from literally like someone who's more soft spoken, which kind of goes to, hey, you could be introverted or soft spoken. That doesn't mean that you can't be in front of the camera. And so that's one way too that I could see that. Or literally soft power in just the sense of like, tapping into that emotional side of things too. So instead of just the logical, side of things, also that emotional piece, because I think there is something soft about that, the sensitivity. And actually, that's, I think, how women are starting to dominate business nowadays is
Yeah.
through that soft power. And then some women like go for it. They do have this like really masculine power and energy and like, like go for it. But there's this whole other side too that I feel like we're just validating that there
Yeah.
is power in that. That's why the word power is in there.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
as a, sorry, I was going to say, as like growing up, I think I struggled with this so much too, because again, like I said, you're hardening as you're growing up. You're learning not to cry over spilt milk. You're learning that
Mm-hmm.
your parents don't have time for your emotions because work is more important, or what, these little things that kind of, they do make you harder. And for me, it just resulted in ways that like we didn't really touch on this, but I went into like a very toxic relationship really early on. Things like that, because I was so like, I was hardening, I was becoming so masculine, like I was doing things that just women don't do, or trying to be one of the boys, or trying to be like them,
Mm-hmm.
so be recognized. I can be powerful in work and business, or even just in regular daily life, right? So, and then as I became a mom, that's when things really shifted. I mean, when I got married, it definitely shifted a little bit, because I was like, okay, I can now trust somebody to now become that anchor that I needed when that's what I've been looking for, obviously. And as an adult, I realized, okay, or as a mom, I realized that that's me. I'm the soft one. I'm the one who brings softness to this. And, it actually is the thing that the family runs on. I am the power source. So
Mm.
that, yeah.
You are the power. I like that. But I also like that. I think it just validates how it's like no role in life, in career, in business, right? Is one is better than the other. They're all equally important and they're all very valuable and they're all necessary. So that's why we all have different strengths and weaknesses. That's why there's different forms of power, because they are all valuable. And so it's really just that. It's not one is better than the other. It's they are all valuable. They all have a seat at the table. They operate differently. There's different roles and responsibilities, but they are actually like equally powerful, equally as valid. So I love that. So I would love to hear, now that you know that you are, kind of honing your like skills and services to really offer, support in building systems. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your current offers are looking like and what you want to maybe share with listeners?
Yeah, sure. I want to offer you guys some of my services. I do like an auditing service. So this is something that's, I think, a nice easy starting point for everyone. Just to have somebody come in and look at your business, see what's working, and like where your systems aren't connecting, where they could just use little fine improvements, or where we could maybe automate some things. Like a lot of times you guys are doing manual labor that we can automate. So it takes time. It usually will free up your payroll a little bit, because you don't have to pay somebody a salary if AI can do that. And not trying to take away jobs from other people, but it does free them up for things that that they need to do, like the creative work and those kinds of things. So especially like with productions, that's mainly the back end pulls people down, and we can automate a lot of it. So And I find the same thing with other businesses. So, but the offer I'm going to be doing is $97 for the audit. So it's normally $250. And then our websites, the web builds, I mean, they're very custom to what your needs are. So I obviously will quote you different rates, but if you need a build starting from the ground up, just from scratch, it starts at 2,800. But I'm going to do it for 1,000 for our listeners, for the 10 people who tune in and reach out and need help. So I hope that these services help somebody.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Hutton.
Yeah.
I think, you have this really great energy about you. Like you said, we vibed for a reason. And I love hearing all the different things that you've tried along the way. I feel like you're stepping into something that takes everything you've learned from all the different experiences and starts kind of packaging it into one. We're hearing it live as you are figuring it out, literally. And so
Yeah.
I just can't wait to see where this goes, where this continues to take you, how you continue to hone in on it and keep finding what works for you in this season and what feels aligned for you. So if you could have listeners take something away from this conversation, what would it be?
Yeah, I would think that, I would say that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Don't put yourself in a box, and don't be afraid to try new things. That's one of those things that holds people back, is that they're just afraid to get out there and try something new. For me, trying new things has been the most valuable thing, or the most progressive experiences I've had is from trying new things. So I would definitely put yourself out there too, because you can't grow if you don't put yourself out there.
It makes you more interesting too. Look at that. Like, you've got stories to tell, and yeah, it's just like, wow, there's so much content here. We clearly could have had like a podcast episode about each and every one of your different ventures legitimately, and you probably should create a podcast episode of your own of all these all these like different ventures. So to that point, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with me on my podcast. It's called Her Soft Power. We do Spotify, Apple, and I'm trying to get me onto YouTube, but I just haven't had the time quite recently. But so you can find me anywhere there. We have a free Facebook group. It's called Soft Power Founders. So that one's great for anybody to just get involved, start getting tips. People are in there sharing what works, what doesn't work, what they're struggling with. And then I just happy to give you guys free advice in there. So those are two great ways to connect with me. And then you can find me on social media. I'm Hutton Salvatore, or you can go to the podcast page. It's Her Soft Power Pod.
Love it. So many great ways to connect. Obviously, all of that information will be in the show notes in the description. And I just joined, by the way, the Facebook group, the Soft Power Facebook group. So I'm excited to be on there. And so if you join too, I'd love to hear from you and see you on that group as well. Well, thank you so much, Hutton, for being on the show. Thank you all so much for listening. And we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks for having me.